Welcome to the Honest Field Guide podcast, a weekly show dedicated to winning in entrepreneurship. I'm your host, JinJa Birkenbeuel. I'm the CEO of Burt Creative, a leadership, brand strategy, and visual identity agency dedicated to helping scale brands and assist with their adaptability with the market. On my show, you get to eavesdrop in on intimate conversation with business leaders and inspired entrepreneurs, designed to give you tips and strategies so your own business can thrive. Subscribe and join me each week for laughter, inspiration, and honest stories. Everybody, welcome to my show, the Honest Field Guide podcast. My name is JinJa Birkenbeuel. I am your host, and I really want to thank you for joining me today. You could be listening to any podcast in the world right now, but you're choosing to listen to mine. So if you are a new listener to my show, I'd love for you to subscribe to my show on Spotify podcast, where you can listen to my show right from your browser on any device, no subscription required. Share my show with your community on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Tag me, JinJa Birkenbeuel, or tag the name of my show, The Honest Field Guide. And also, I would love it if you left a 4-star review on Apple Podcasts, because my largest audience is actually on Apple. Although you can always look at our video on YouTube and Spotify, but Apple is really the bomb. So, all right, let me get started. You all know, for those of you that are familiar with my show, that I always have like a little intro to kind of say why is this person on my show? Why do I care? Who is this person? JinJa always has really interesting people, behind the scenes and things like that. And you're in for a treat. You are in for a treat, 100% treat. So I was in New York a little bit ago, Fast Company Innovation Festival. I write for Fast Company magazine. Excitingly, I write, I'm not a paid writer. I actually write opinion articles, and they're usually really highly read. So anyway, I go there every year, and I was invited to this particular event called The Skim, which is this online magazine started by two women, really amazing. And the panel was about women in sports. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I told this last month when I interviewed Joe Favorito. He's got a show called The Cusp. I am not an athlete. Okay, absolutely, positively, 100% not. I wanted to go to this thing because 2 of my 3 sons are athletes. One is a Division I volleyball player, and the other one is a varsity hockey player. And we're probably going to, level him up because he wants to play hockey in college. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this panel. And it was women in sports again. And I was like, I got to learn how to help my sons be more successful. And women literally are the most knowledgeable about anything anyway, strategy, design, ideas, directions. I'm like, even though it's about women in sports, I'm going to go there because I know I'm going to come away and I'm going to learn something. And I was also thinking, in the back of my mind, I was like, we just came off of some crazy social media thing, with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. And then there was the thing that happened, with Brittany Griner. And then I was like, Megan Rapinoe, she somehow was able to convince people that convince every man in America that women were underpaid. And I was like, let me go see what these women in sports have to say, because I'm like, there's so much going on. So anyway, the only other thing I will say before I bring my guest on is I am not athletic. The only time I was ever exposed to women's professional basketball was when my girlfriend Susie, she took me to a DePaul women's basketball game. And I remember sitting in the crowd, and I was like, and I'm probably dating myself, right? When I say this, but I was sitting in the crowd I had no idea what was going on. I was like, what is happening? My girlfriend was totally athletic. She knew all the rules. And I was like, I really did feel like a fish out of water, but I was also impressed by the athleticism and the focus and the passion of these women on the court. I was like, wow, this is crazy. So anyway, back to my Skim panel. When I got to the panel, I was like, I saw this woman on the panel. She was beautiful. She had an afro just like me. And she was poised and exuded this confidence. And, keep in mind, we're in an environment where there's not a lot of Black women in leadership that are in roles that are really out there and that are seizing the day to this extent. And I was really blown away by her. And I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? And so I walked up to her and I said, I want to talk to you. I want to know who you are and what you're up to. And I invited her on my show, and she said yes. So I right away went back to my office and I did a bunch of research, and I was so blown away by what I read. This woman had humble beginnings, and she's now running one of the most positive sports brands in the world with one of the most vibrant mascots I have ever seen in my life. And I want to welcome Shana Stephenson to my show. Welcome, Shana.
Thank you. What an amazing intro. And I'm so thankful to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm just glad to finally have gotten you. And we are in Black History Month and we're about to run into Women's History Month. So we got like everything great going.
Yeah.
So, all right. So before we get into all things branding creativity, because that's sort of your platform, like you are a super, you're what I would call a super creative. Um, can you go beyond your powerful title as Chief Brand Officer at New York Liberty and instead explain to me how would you describe what you do to a young person that's on a career path, but maybe doesn't know if what they're doing can turn into a career or how they can turn it into one?
Oh, that is kind of loaded to start. I would say that I'm passionate about storytelling. I'm passionate about sports storytelling and exceptionally passionate about storytelling that centers women. Um, and that's at the heart of what I do. So whether it's, bringing their stories to life and amplifying their game on the court or off the court or what they have going on in their lives at home, all of that comes back to storytelling. It's how we curate our content on social media. What is the voice in which we're delivering this content to our fans? If it's an all access series, what are the storylines that we're trying to convey? What do we want fans to learn new about our players? While media has improved in terms of their coverage of women's sports, there's still obviously a gap. And we still have so many more stories that we can tell. And I like to look at the Liberty as contributing to that. And so a lot of what I do is, kind of lead that for this organization and for this team and figure out how we can bring more of those stories to life, how we can create more access for our fans to our athletes or from our fans to even our mascot Ellie or Timeless Torches, our dance and entertainment team. So if I had to sum it up in one word, I would say it's storytelling.
I love that. I was at the Sundance Film Festival this year. I go every year, and I'm a credentialed journalist when I get there. And the theme, of course, is always about storytelling. And it was an interesting time to be talking about storytelling because there were people at the Sundance Film Festival that were questioning the validity and the power and should we even be telling stories anymore, that maybe we should have more action, right? And so I thought that was fascinating because what is Sundance if it's not about storytelling? And if you have someone there questioning why are we doing this, maybe we need to just go out in the streets. So I'm kind of curious, with the storytelling concept. I want to think about what was happening when you were a child. I mean, did you grow up in a family of storytellers? I mean, were your parents athletes? Were you sitting around the table and talking about your day? Because I just don't think everybody is a storyteller. I don't think I don't think it's natural for everybody.
No, I wouldn't say that I grew up in a household of storytellers. I love to read. I was, an avid reader as a child, so that's where it really started for me. Um, I would actually like read while also watching TV, which my dad always thought was a very interesting skill, I guess, that I had. But um, as I got older, it just became more important for me to see myself. And representation, is so important in everything that we do. And just recognizing the lack of stories that, centered people that look like me or centered women that look like me. And so that definitely became a priority. But no, I mean, I wasn't an athlete. Like you talk about yourself and that you didn't grow up as an athlete. I played volleyball and basketball in seventh and eighth grade, and that was the extent of my athletic career. I'm also only 5 feet tall and haven't grown since fifth grade. So I knew that, I was very realistic about the fact that I would not become like an elite athlete. But growing up in New York, um, sports is at the center of the culture here, and I don't think there's any way that you could grow up in New York and not become a sports fan. And my brother was an athlete. And so I have, and we're still very close to this day. And so that's how sports became so important to me. But I didn't think about it as a career path until after college, once I had already graduated and was still, such a big sports fan, but also pursuing a career in marketing, that I figured like, oh, there might be a way for me to bring these two together. And so that's kind of how I ended up on this path. But it wasn't something that I dreamt about as a child. Um, didn't even really know it existed. But I did, like I say, I love to read. I would even, read the newspaper. But I would start in the sports section of the newspaper. So start on the back page of the newspaper and then work my way to the front part of the newspaper. So that, I guess, is where it all started for me.
I love that. So, I guess, I mean, so in high school, what were you doing in high school? Like, when I talk to people like you, that are in marketing, there was something that they were doing in high school that was like a foreshadow of what they're doing today, right? Was there anything happening there? And one of the reasons I ask this is I feel like high schoolers now are burdened with too much media, and they're not really having the opportunity to get the spark because they're being given sparks versus creating their own. So I'm
Yeah.
looking for something inspiring and encouraging for you to say. I like this is what happened to me, and when I look back, it's like, you know what, Ginger, yeah, like that's what I was doing.
No, I actually am probably the worst, like, example of someone. I wasn't active in any extracurricular activities because I considered myself introverted, and
Wow.
yeah, like very, even still, like I see myself as like somewhat socially awkward, and don't love big crowds and being the center of attention, even though I have a very public role. I would rather just be home on a Saturday night by myself and not bothered with anyone. But I'm able to like come out of my shell, interact, engage when I need to, but would much rather not be bothered. So in high school, while I have friends, I was never like the coolest kid and everyone wanted to hang with me. I have always had just like my small circle of friends. But I was very much into music, like hip hop music, and I danced, but not in going back to being like shy or introverted. I never took like formal or organized dance classes. I just like naturally danced, but I would choreograph dance routines for my school that started in like seventh and eighth grade. Um, and I guess that was a form of me being creative, and a form of self-expression, and just thinking through like how we could use dance and art to convey different stories and messages, because a lot of the dances that I choreographed at that time did center Black people. It would be for like Black History Month, or just introducing hip hop as a genre, um, when that wasn't the norm at my school. So always just kind of like taking ways in which I identify and things that really matter to me, and introducing them into spaces that weren't traditionally created for people that look like me.
I love it. You're saying that there was nothing you were doing that really informed who you are today, but I disagree. I mean, I completely disagree because I'm hearing someone who is like doing what you're doing now, but you didn't
Yeah.
know what you were doing then, that it would actually look like what you're doing today. I mean, I was not choreographing dances when I was in high school. I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, but that sounds like a professional, that sounds like an entrepreneurial space to me, like an entrepreneurial thinking that everyone doesn't have. I mean, that's the thing. I always talk about this all the time. Entrepreneurs are not like everybody else, and you obviously are one, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but we're not like everybody else, and we are able to take you know disparate things in the world and bring them together and make them into something amazing that other people like or listen to or love or want, or want. So I just think it's, I'm just hearing about this is great. So when you got to college, fast forward, you weren't doing sports in college. Like you were,
No, no, no,
what
no.
was like, what were you doing in college that,
So in college, I started. So I attended Spelman College in Atlanta,
wow,
Georgia, HBCU, all female HBCU, and I was actually a chemistry pre-med major when I started at Spelman. Spelman is a very tough school, and I struggled academically, and eventually changed my major from chemistry pre-med to psychology. And that was really more or less like that was a survival tactic for me because I was struggling as a chemistry pre-med major and I was like, I have got to turn this around. So what would be the easiest way for me to turn this around and improve my GPA, and graduate with some sort of respectability? And so freshman year, I changed my major to, I think it was psychology pre-med. And then by sophomore, I just completely dropped pre-med. And then I was a psychology major with a business minor. And I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time. But like I said, it was really just a matter of, oh, well, I can read books and chapters and write papers. Like that's what this will probably be, and I'll be able to bring up my grades that way. And when I started to get into the classes, psychology and business is marketing. So that became a focus for me. But then I also had this love for fashion. So then I started to take some fashion classes. And when I graduated college, my first job out of college was actually working in fashion. So I worked in fashion for a little bit once I
what in
graduated college.
fashion? What in fashion were you doing? That's so random.
So I worked as a personal shopper's assistant, so like doing some styling. I then worked at a PR firm, and then I also was a designer's assistant for Mara Hoffman, who went on to be very successful and have an amazing career. But when I started working for her, we literally just like worked out of her Soho apartment, and it was very grassroots, very underground, but I was able to get a ton of experience working with her, because you speak about an entrepreneur. She was a young entrepreneur just trying to figure it out, and I was there supporting her in that and helping produce her fashion shows for Fashion Week and booking models and leading production on her lookbooks. And so a lot of that, and then taking meetings with potential buyers to get her line and in different retail stores. So it all tied back to marketing in one way or the other. And as I was kind of like on that career trajectory, sports was still in the background because I was just a massive fan of sports, and I watched it, I debated it, I listened to sports talk radio, I read the articles, I consumed it in any
Amazing.
form that it was presented to me. And, after a while, so many people were like, you should work in sports. Have you ever considered a career in sports? I think you would do really well in sport. And I they were saying that from the perspective of me becoming on air talent, but I saw it more so through the lens of marketing, and just being able to transfer the marketing skills that I had honed prior and just like transferring that into the sport industry. Um, which has worked out for me well, but initially it was really difficult to break into just because sports is such a competitive industry.
I want to ask you before you go on because I do want to talk about that because you have this amazing podcast that I would hit on, but when you were doing all these things, what was happening with your parents? Like, were they like, what is our daughter? What is what is going on?
So,
She was going to be a doctor, and now she's like working in Soho as an assistant.
so my parents never pressured me to do anything. My parents are amazing, and
I love that.
they
I
they
love that.
always just wanted me to be happy, and they trusted me because I was always a great student. Never gave them any problems or, any concerns or worries. And you mentioned entrepreneurs, like they had an entrepreneurial spirit. And so it was very much encouraged that I pursue entrepreneurship at some point.
Do they have a
Um,
business?
they had several businesses. They're since retired now, but they had several
Oh,
businesses while
okay.
also working full time, and yeah. But um, I worked at ESPN, so my first job in sports was at ESPN.
And this is after you graduate from college,
This
right?
is after I graduated from
And
college,
after you left Soho thing,
after
right?
I worked in fashion, and I decided, you know what, I do want to pursue a career in sports. Um, the first opportunity in the industry I got was from ESPN. And I worked at ESPN for 3 years. And I felt that while I learned a lot and it was a really great place for me to just kind of cut my teeth within the industry, I knew that I had more to contribute. I knew that I wanted to have a broader impact within the sport industry, that being at ESPN didn't afford me at the time. And so I quit ESPN. And that's when, for the first time, my parents were like, "What are you doing? Um,
You're
what
just
is happening?"
they're just like, oh Lord, she's gonna be living in her basement. She's
Yeah,
coming back
because
home.
ESPN to so many people is like the dream job,
Yes, yes.
and I get it, especially because I didn't have anything lined up. So I was like, look, I'm quitting, but I'm going to work for myself. And my dad is very much, him and my mom are from the boomer generation. So you don't quit one job until you have another job. Or if you are going to start a business, I need to see your business plan. So I had to work on a business plan. I had to present it to them. But at the end of the day, I made the decision that I was leaving
So
ESPN.
wait, so wait. Okay, I love your parents, and I need to get them on my show to get some parenting skills because I need help with my children. I need to do what they did. I'm trying to figure out. You're a grown woman, and you have to present a business plan to your parents. Like
Yeah,
seriously, that is so crazy to me. It's
yeah,
beautiful, but crazy. So
yeah.
wait, though. I want to get back to something that you said that you had more to do, more to offer. You were in your head thinking, "There's something more here." That's a mindset piece that I want to understand a little bit more because when I did research on you and I looked you up and I was looking at your original very first Facebook post with you in a room like seemingly windowless, talking about sports, black people in sports. It was incredible. I mean, I don't even know like how big your audience was. Like I'm like who is she talking to? Is anybody here? And it didn't like you were like so passionate. So
Yeah.
like I want to understand your mindset because a lot of the things about entrepreneurship and why some entrepreneurs work and why some don't or why some become successful or not, it has to do with that initial like there's something more and I have to go with it and no one's going to stop me. So
Yeah.
we're like I don't understand like where did you get this I got something more to do. Where did it come from and how long was it in your head?
So my parents always poured into me. I always felt seen and valued and respected by them. Um, they treated me like I was a person, and they allowed me to make decisions for myself. They are also really amazing examples for me to, model myself after. But then also attending Spelman, where Black women are the center of this really rich community, and so many Spelman alum go on to do incredible things in the world, and to have that as a foundation that has really shaped who I am today, and enriched me in a way that it helped me develop a strong sense of self and identity, and knowing you know, the value that I bring to this world, and how to navigate this world as a Black woman, and not to see my identity as a Black woman as a lack, but know that it 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 brings I bring value in every space that I'm in, right? And I should never feel like I don't. Um, and I think that that has really helped me hone in on who I am and how I show up in the world. And when I was at ESPN, I just knew that that environment wasn't it wasn't feeding me in the way that I wanted. And I knew that I had more to offer. And it didn't empower me to speak up. It didn't and I didn't see people that looked like me in meetings. Um, and I just didn't feel like I was fulfilled in that space, and I had to go on and do something else. And as a result of that, um, as a sports fan, I also was paying attention to what was happening in women's sports. And this was in like 2010. And, the lack of resources around women's sports and the WNBA, and how, the pay disparity that existed then and still exists today. But even the lack of representation in who was covering the stories of these women athletes, how are white men covering Black men who play the NFL, who are playing in the NBA. And I felt like there was a lack of humanization around these athletes. And as a Black woman, I could relate in a way that they couldn't. Humanize them in the way that, wasn't happening. And, it's funny that you say, like, how big was her following? Who was she talking to? I didn't even care, because I knew
I
that.
know you didn't.
I
I know
knew
you didn't.
that.
That's why you're successful. That is why you are successful, because you're like, I have a passion, I have a mission. I don't care. It's gonna happen. But go ahead.
But, it was like, even if it's just one person, like, even if
Mhm.
my little tiny blog, my little corner of the internet reaches one person, that was enough for me. And it eventually grew to thousands, but it was a slow growth, but it opened up so many doors for me to then, you know, be invited onto MSNBC and be a talking head on the Melissa Harris Perry show, or to contribute for ESPNW on a regular basis, or to write a feature on Bleacher Report. It opened up all these other doors for me to just kind of talk about what was happening within sport, from a social perspective, but through my lens as a Black woman, where I didn't have to uh, minimize the fact that I'm a Black woman. Like, that's what made what I was saying stand out from everything else that everyone else was saying.
And we're talking about your show, All Sports Everything, right? Is this what we're talking about? Because you had All Sports Everything, marquee matchups,
Yeah.
rising young sports executives. Like, you were just like blowing up with all these different ideas. And the thing that jumped out at me, of course, because I'm a podcaster, I love radio, was your conversations that you were having on your show. But is that like, so you left ESPN to launch All Sports Everything? Is that what it was?
So
And
no, so I left ESPN to launch Marquee Matchups, which was
okay.
my sports marketing agency. Um, and that was in 2010, but also in 2010, the NBA and the NFL both had lockouts. And so it was a little bit more challenging. And then, I was also interested in working with female athletes, and I did work with some female athletes, but um,
Were you making money?
excuse me.
Were you making money?
Not a ton.
Okay.
I had savings, but I wasn't making a ton. But I did have some paying clients. But you know how it is. You just
Yep,
have to,
I
like,
do.
get your foot in the door, and it's like, all right, let me prove that I can secure a deal for you and then you can pay me off of that. It's like you eat what you kill. You just have to put in the work. And so I was just grinding, taking meetings, working on pitches. Some would
So like,
come to
did you,
fruition, some
I
wouldn't.
mean, did you see other people doing what you were doing? I mean, I feel like you're describing a world that I always envision that a man's doing. So, you brought all this to life. You weren't making a ton of money, but you still kept going, right? I mean, who was helping you? Did you have a mentor? I mean, like, who was kind of guiding you? Because your mom and dad are not in athletics, right?
No, my parents aren't in this business. My brother works in entertainment and he has his own company and has had his own business now for 20 years. He works with music artists and produces their tours and live performances. And so there's a lot of, and even to this day, there's a lot of synergy in what each of us do in terms of like live events, because sports, games are live events. So it's always fun where there's, some crossover in our work. But he was definitely one of my mentors and advisors. And some of the video productions that I worked on, he helped produce for me, because he had a production company and he was able to leverage, some of his people to help me with that, and that was really cool.
I mean, so you were like I'm just like listening to all this because you had a lot going on and
I
you
have
were
a lot
learning.
going
I
on.
mean, you were learning as you were going and you were I almost feel like when I hear you talk about this, you were creating your own career. Like you were creating this space that you hadn't necessarily seen someone in, but you were making it up and you were putting it all together, which is what entrepreneurs do. I mean, that's what we
Yeah.
do. Like we figure out how to make beautiful things and I feel like you did that. I want to understand because one of the things that's very hard for entrepreneurs and small business owners to do is to stop all that and say, you know what, I'm going to go work inside. I'm going to take this job. Like you were inside before. So you had that understanding of what it's like to work in a corporate environment. Then you left and opened your own thing. I'm trying to figure out like how in the world did you decide I'm going to give up my freedom and I'm going to do this? Like what was the path for you? Oh, and before you even answer that, I have to read this very last post you had on your Facebook. It was on January 1st, 2012. You wrote, "Happy New Year. I wish you all an abundance of good health, prosperity, love, and laughs in 2012. And a special thanks to all of you for supporting my blog. You've helped me realize what my true passion is. I can't thank you enough. Stay tuned for much, much bigger and better things from me and ASE in 2012." You like this was like your last post. And I was like, oh my God, like something big's about to happen. And then I saw nothing. I'm like, what happened? Like, so I kind of want to understand, is that the space where like, how did you go from that to where
Yeah,
you are now? Is
so
that
yeah, so marquee matchups is what I left ESPN to start. But it was tough and money wasn't rolling in, and even though I was having successful meetings and pitches and things and working with some clients, it wasn't like lucrative. But then I also, when I worked at ESPN, I always wanted to start a blog. And I just figured it would be a conflict of interest for me to be at ESPN, but have a sports blog, because couldn't, be as honest as I would want to about criticizing or offer my opinion about certain topics. And some of that might be, disagreeing with what was happening at ESPN. And so I had to keep a job at the time. But once I left, I took that opportunity to start my blog. And it's initially started as me as a Jets, Knicks, Yankees fan,
yeah.
like venting about being a
I love
Jets,
your venting.
Knicks, Yankees
I
fan.
loved it. I love it. I kind of miss that venting. I miss it.
Yeah, so a lot of it was just kind of like me reacting to what was happening in that world, but then it evolved to me talking about more the cultural intersections of sport, the fashion, because again, I love fashion. So covering athletes who might have been doing things within the fashion space. Huge Venus and Serena fan, so like anything that they did, I would, write about it. And then the NFL and their domestic violence issues was like a really big topic during that period. And I wrote a lot. And that's when I actually had my first opportunity to go on TV and talk about it. And then I started to like venture more into sports activism and social issues that focused on gender related issues or race related issues. I remember an early story that I wrote around that time that focused on the lack of um, black male head coaches in NCAA basketball and why, and so a lot of the work that and the writing that I started to pursue more so was approaching it through that lens and really highlighting the racial inequities, the gender inequities that existed within sports that was largely driven, this multi-billion dollar industry largely driven by black talent, yet we're the most marginalized in this space, right? And so just kind of like raising a lot of awareness around that. And through that, I started to get a lot more attention, more invitations to speak on TV or at conferences or to contribute and write articles. And that just opened a lot of doors for me. And then that also then helps fuel my marquee matchups business again, because now I am being recognized as this voice and this thinker and this thought leader within this space. And can we hire you to work with us on, whatever brand or however I could contribute? And so my former ESPN boss then was working at Madison Square Garden, and she was following all the work that I was doing. And she asked if I would be interested in coming back full time. And at the time, I was not interested. But I said that I would consult. So she hired me as a consultant to work at some stuff at the Garden. And one of those jobs that I was able to work on and consult on eventually was the Liberty. And so I consulted with the Liberty for a full season in 2018, but still maintained my blog and I had a podcast and
Sounds perfect.
everything that I was doing at that time. But then when the team was ultimately bought and our CEO had to hire a full-time staff, she asked if I would be interested in coming to work here full-time. And I said yes, because it perfectly connected the dots and what the Liberty represent and the values that this organization stands for. It aligned with me, but it connected the dots for everything that I had been writing about, screaming about. And I really felt like, going back to me feeling like I wanted to have more impact, I could have a huge amount of impact in this role.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what I love about you is you're authentic, and I hate to use, I almost feel like it's a cliche now to say unapologetic, but there is a way that you have that about yourself, but it's not in an angry space. It's really like, this is who I am, and if I can't be who I am, what am I doing here?
Yeah,
And I love that people around you support you and believe that about you, and they are willing to go with you down the path. I mean, obviously you're talented and you're knowledgeable and you do your research. You know what I mean? You're not just
yeah.
like floating around,
Thank you.
trying to, play. You're not in a space anymore of, building as you're flying. Like you're,
Right,
you know what I'm
right.
saying? You're not there anymore. Obviously very skilled. But and that's actually what jumped out at me when I saw you at the Skim. You know, there was something that I read online. It was from this thing called Human Kinetics Journal, A Perfect Storm, Black Feminism and Women's National Basketball Association, Black Athletic Activism. And I want to read this excerpt because I feel like, you are working for a woman boss. You're surrounded by women. You're working for the WNBA. You have this amazing mascot called Ellie, which I'm not even sure. I feel like Ellie is universal. Ellie is inclusive. I don't even like to say he or she. I just say this is Ellie. Um, you know, you you're just surrounded by a lot of feminine energy. Um, But I was just reading this thing, which I was fascinated by. The Women's National Basketball Association, WNBA, opened their Wubble and dedicated their 2020 season in honor of Breonna Taylor, a black woman and emergency medical technician who was murdered by police in her bed while she slept. The move was not surprising given the long history of WNBA athletes who are predominantly black women and their engagement in activism, which is like beautiful to me. I read this, I'm like, oh my God, this is,
Yeah.
and the players have historically been some of the primary activists for social issues, oftentimes without much support, job security, and our proper credit given. Unfortunately, this lack of acknowledgement is nothing new for Black women and non binary folks in sport. The history of women's sports has typically focused on white women, and the history of racialized sport and athletic activism has focused on Black men. The current body of work aims to centralize the efforts of Black women and non-binary athletes along the lines of activism to explain why they have been historically erased and to ensure that their erasure is no longer allowed. I know that's a lot. However, I feel like between, your creation of this beautiful role, at Liberty, your involvement in the creation of Ellie the Elephant, which is an incredibly powerful, positive, energetic mascot, which, in my opinion, by the way, combines dance, fashion, music, and all the things. I'm just really curious, what you think about what I just read there, without getting, I mean, this could be a much longer conversation, how this applies to what you're trying to do at Liberty, right? Or what you've accomplished at Liberty.
I mean, it's a great representation of why I show up every day and why I'm here. I think, in 2016, the Liberty were a part of a league-wide media boycott in response to the unjust killings of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. And when they decided that they were going to wear Black Lives Matters t-shirts in place of their shooting shirts or their warm-up shirts, the league initially fined them for that. And later the fine was rescinded, but at this time I wasn't working for the team. I was working for myself, and I was like covering it, like I wrote about it. And I remember how outraged I was that the league would fine them for that instead of applauding them for using their platform. And especially at a time where Black male athletes weren't as vocal as women athletes were, Black women athletes are, and they have a lot more to lose. Like, they're sacrificing a lot more to make a statement. And there's a lot of pride in that for me. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to take this job to begin with, because I had such a tremendous amount of respect for these women. But I also wanted to be a part of the solution for creating more opportunity for them as well, giving rise to their voice, growing their platforms, amplifying, their amazing athleticism, but also issues that matter to them. And the Liberty is an organization that, while that initial media boycott took place in 2016, as an organization, it said, this is important. We need to annualize this. And this isn't going to be a one and done thing for us. We're going to dedicate at least one of our games every season to these types of social causes, these racial injustice causes, and raise awareness. And I love that. That matters to me. And we've doubled down on that year over year over year. And so now I'm here and I'm in that role of saying, okay, what is this year's theme going to be? What can we do to continue to raise awareness around this? I was in the Wubble in 2020 and was alongside those athletes who dedicated the season to Breonna Taylor. As an organization, the New York Liberty, we also dedicated that season to Breonna Taylor. We created PSAs around it that, I wrote a script and had the players record it as a way for us to continue to just fight for justice for Breonna Taylor. And it's so meaningful for me. And so that, that statement that you read, I can identify with it because I'm living it. You know, every day I show up, I'm living it. And it's what makes our league unique. And as we saw unprecedented growth last season, I love that that still remains the core and the foundation of this league. And we've seen, you know, astronomical growth in terms of sponsors coming on board. And, you know, speaking specifically for the Liberty, we only align with partners who share in those values, you know,
Oh,
who
nice. I love it.
understand this matters to us. And if we have something to say on these issues, we are going to say it. And you need to make sure that you are comfortable with that and you align with us on that.
I love you for saying that. And that was actually one of my questions. You know, where does your courage come from? How do you get the courage? I mean, you obviously you're confident, you're authentic. And, thinking back to what you said when you left ESPN, I'm not feeding my soul here. And you're obviously where you're working now at Liberty, you are feeding your soul. And you're also bringing all of your entrepreneurial prowess to the role. It's incredible. But I want to ask you, this is a very challenging time to be courageous. This is a hard time to stick with your beliefs and say this is really how we feel, and you need to know that we feel this way. So if you want to be with us, like, you kind of have to know what you're doing. So how do you get the courage, and how would you tell someone else that's in a leadership role, where can you get the courage? What does it take?
It doesn't even feel like courage to me. Like I don't know any other way. And you know, when I worked at ESPN, I tell this story a lot. When I worked at ESPN, I was natural, but I was still straightening my hair when I worked at ESPN. And then when I left is when I started to just like wear it in the fro state. But I feel like that was like my most authentic self. And that's when I oozed with the most creativity, oozed with the most confidence. And when I started to receive invitations to speak at a panel or at a conference or give a keynote address or go on air, I was like, they booked me in this fro, so I'm not going to suddenly start, you know, like straightening my hair and like I'm
I
not
love
doing
it.
that.
I
If
love
you
it.
want Shana Stevenson, you're getting Shana Stevenson and this fro. Like this is who I am. And now I'm locking my hair, which is a whole other thing. But
I
um,
love that about you. You do so many different things with your hair. I swear. It's like I see on
I
your,
mean,
everybody needs to look at Shayna's Instagram because she's got 5,000 shades of hair. Like,
I
so
mean, that's
many.
the versatility of Black women hair. I mean, that's what makes it beautiful. But um, I just don't know anything other than to be myself and to
Okay.
be my authentic self. And
And that's hard, but
um,
that's hard though. I mean, I guess that's kind of what I'm saying, that if I were to hear a message in what you just said, one of the ways that I believe you can get courage and have courage and stay courageous is to be as authentic as you possibly can, or
yeah,
to be authentic, period, and to really like tap into your core beliefs and to feel them and express them and to stay grounded in them and to believe them, like, and to believe
yeah,
in yourself that you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I think a lot of people are afraid they're not going to be okay, and they're not willing to do some of the work it takes to be themselves, which then brings courage. And that's why when you say it feels this is in my natural state, you're tapping into places inside of yourself to make it work. And listen, I've talked to you before this conversation, and you're just like, if I can't be who I am, what am I doing here? Like, I have
yeah.
to be around people that understand this is who I am.
And it goes back to like earlier in the conversation when we talked, and I said I wasn't like the most popular girl in school. I didn't have a ton of friends. Um, because I was like, if this space isn't for me, then it's not for me. You know, if you don't want to be my friend, I don't care. We don't need to be friends. Um, and so I've always prioritized just people that value me and get me, and being in spaces that I feel like serve me in a positive way. And if it doesn't, then I'm not going to force it.
I love it. I think that is really important, and I believe that the reason why Ellie the Elephant, and if for my listeners, if you've not seen this amazing mascot, this is this is such a big deal. Like, I feel like Ellie the Elephant should be inspiring every single sports team across America. And I love when I first talked to you about this, you said that this was a creation of lots of women, within the organization. How did you get this mascot to be so inclusive and shockingly amazing and beautiful and fun and vibrant? And so all these little girls are like, you know, dancing with Ellie. Like, was that process easy for you to lead? I'm assuming you led the process.
Yeah, I think it was collaboration between our CEO and myself, and then we enlisted Chrissia Long, who's our senior director of entertainment, and she leads all of the dance teams. And then we really got lucky in hiring an extremely talented person who puts on the costume, but doesn't just put on a costume, like truly embodies Ellie in every sense of the character, and lives, breathes this mascot. And it's not like they just show up for game day and it's like, okay, time for me to put the costume on, and then they take it off and that's it, right? And I think that that's what you see. Like, we're all extremely passionate about this brand. We're all extremely passionate about the way that it shows up in the world and the community. Because it's, we recognize that we're really fortunate to work for a brand, work in an industry that helps shape core identity, core moments for people, right? And so you don't have to come to a Liberty game. That is a privilege that we have, for you to choose to spend your hard-earned money and come to a game, or be home on a Thursday night and turn the TV on and watch our games, right? So it's not something that we take for granted, and we want to work as hard as we can to make sure that every engagement, every touch point you have with us is one that is positive and one that is memorable. It helps you see yourself. If you step in our building, I want you to walk away feeling like you belong there, that it's a home for you. And so, yeah, there's a lot of intentionality that goes into that, but it also, I don't want to say it feels effortless, because we do work on it and it is strategic, but because it's such a core identity to who we are, so it's part of our core values, it just feels natural as well.
Are you hiring? I'm like, how do I get a job with you? My God, I'm willing to throw it all away just to come work for you the way you did ESPN. Then you went back to Liberty. I'm like, I'm ready to work for you, sis. Please hire me. I really love this conversation. I think that we need more Black people in creative spaces, in leadership roles. Like, we need more of you. We need more women like you. We need more women and men like you in creative. I wrote an essay about where are all the Black creatives. Well, you're one of them. Like, you're here and you're on my show, and I'm so grateful for you to be here. I wrote an article about, how going from straight to Afro changed my brand, which it did. Completely changed my brand in ways that I wasn't expecting.
I can identify. I can relate to that.
I know
Yeah.
you can. Exactly. I get it. So I feel like we need to somehow find a way to get you in more places where you can be seen, so that more people like you, that look like you, can get to where you are, right? Wherever that is. I mean, doesn't have to be a big giant celebrity organization like the Liberty. Like, there's roles in other companies that are not so glamorous, where someone like you would be very effective and make a difference and make changes. I have 2 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
I want to go down it, because these are like the fun things that I always close the show out on. Okay. All right. So, first of all, thank you. This has been so amazing. You have so much knowledge, and I want to talk to you again sometime, maybe offline, about branding and strategy, because you could probably teach me some things for real.
Okay.
Okay. So, who is the one celebrity person you'd like to be introduced to in person? The person would be the only person that you would be so in awe of that you might be speechless and frozen.
Beyonce.
Totally.
Yes, Beyonce.
I think you're right. I think she would be mine too.
Beyonce. Because, like, what do you say to her?
Like, exactly. You're just
what
like,
do you say to her?
Yeah.
First of all, you're like, she's so beautiful. So once you get past that part, it's like, oh, you really do look like this in real life. But
Yeah,
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 what do you say to her?
100%.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Okay. God, I have 3 questions, but I gotta figure out which one I wanna ask you. Okay, let me ask you this. What small Black-owned business in New York can I shop at for the best clothes and accessories that you can't find anywhere else in the country?
For the best clothes and accessories that you can't find anywhere else in the country. That is a great question.
I mean, listen, New York is full of amazing stuff. I
So one
mean,
of
like,
so that one's not open anymore. That business closed. I can't name that business. Um,
I mean, do we have any left?
they don't have like clothing, but they have like home goods
I
and
like it.
things. And
Yes.
it's in Harlem. I have to cheat. It's spelled
Please.
Nilu.
What is it?
It's spelled Nilu.
Well, I like that it's in Harlem. My son goes to the Manhattan School of Music, which is right near Harlem, and I'd love to send him there.
I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like Nilu Gift Boutique is the name of it, and they sell like a lot of the products that they sell are. I live in Harlem and I've lived there for over 20 years. My mom is from Harlem, so I feel like that's where I'm from. But they'll have like Harlem based candle, like Harlem owned candle companies and books that, celebrate Harlem, and you know what I mean? So,
I love it.
so that's one of the places that I love. And then there's also a show, like a bespoke fashion boutique in Harlem called Harlem Haberdashery.
Ooh, okay.
And it's I don't know if they have female clothing though. I think it might be just male clothing. I'm not sure, but those are two like Harlem-based businesses that I
I
would say.
like it. And I am going to ask you one more question. What is the
Okay.
next song you'd like to see Ellie dance to at the opening of another 2025 New York Liberty game?
I can't say because if I say, then it might give away what we're working on. So I can't say.
Oh
You
my
have to
God.
buy a ticket and come and find out. How about
Darn
that?
it. Darn it. Darn it. All right. Well, listen. Oh my gosh, Shana, you are so amazing. This is a
Oh,
beautiful
thank you.
conversation.
This was great.
Thank you for spending time. This is a great show for Black History Month and again Women's History Month. Everybody needs to check out Shana on her Instagram because it is so amazing. You can see all the beautiful places she goes to, the beautiful things she wears. Her beautiful hair changes all the time. I did want to
Oh,
ask her where she want to go on her next vacation, but we'll have to say that for the next show. But her Instagram is it's Shana Renee, which is SHANARENEE. So it's
yes.
Shana Renee, which is her amazing, amazing Instagram. Follow her there. And if you also want to take a look and learn more about Shana, if you just type her name in Google or wherever, you will find out so much stuff, which is amazing. So thank you, everybody, for joining me on the Honest Field Guide podcast. And thank you again, Shana. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
The Honest Field Guide is produced by the team at Burke Creative, where brand and multi-channel strategies are designed to help you get attention, grow, scale, and keep up with the pace of change. The music on the podcast is written and performed by Utah Carroll. You can find their songs everywhere online to buy or stream. The opinions expressed on the Honest Field Guide are solely those of the hosts and guests.